Hi everyone and welcome back to Chess for Charity. In this video, I'm going to show you a super cool puzzle where there are going to be lots of queens on board. So that's a hint for you. If you would like to try to solve this, feel free to go for it. It's white to move and win. So that's the hint. It is pretty insane. So I would recommend maybe 2 or 3 minutes to just kind of see the ideas. And then maybe if you can calculate the concrete variations, type them in the comments and we'll see if you're right. Okay, before I show you the answer to this, let me quickly encourage you to subscribe if you have not yet already. Half of the income that I earn in this channel goes directly to charity, and we've already almost given $1,000 in the history of this channel. So every like, every subscriber helps contribute to that. So thank you all so much. Okay, let's get started here. So the first thing you might notice is that there are lots of pawns on the board, right? There are 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns for black and 3 for white. So it feels like intuitively white actually is having a disadvantage. Well, how do we turn this into a win? So let's first talk about the threat. If white does nothing, make a nothing move, they will queen, we would also queen, but this will kind of be a win for black because they're getting there first, and usually the side that queens first and gives that first check, they're usually the side with the advantage. So if you want to play this out, feel free, but this is just a rough idea of the sequence. B2 is the next move. Okay, so of course you push the pawn, right? Of course. Why not? So you push this pawn. Great, well they also push their pawn, right? If they don't push the pawn and do something else, they're going to lose pretty quickly, right? If they make a rook, they'll lose quickly. So push to a pawn, or sorry, push to a queen. Okay, now here's the first moment that I think some people may get wrong. I'll tell you my first thought. I was wrong. So I was looking at 3 moves. I was looking at 1, 2, and 3. My thought, especially in puzzles, maybe this is a flaw of mine, is to always look for checks because I know that that's the first thing. Checks, captures, attacks. That's the way I think in terms of puzzles. Well, I'll tell you right now, if you make a move like Queen A5, they can play Queen A2, and there's not much you can do here aside from just check them back and forth. You can try to play for it. You can even try to capture and then push your pawn, but it's not going to work. You can do this. If you want to take, it's not really a good idea. It's just going to lead to a draw. And the same thing here. This will just be a draw. You can check them a lot, but it's not going to be a win. And if you take, just to show the point, the king can take D7, B2, queen, queen, and we're kind of in the same situation. You can't trade everything down because this pawn is dangerous. So just give you an idea of where you're thinking if you go for this Queen A5 move. Okay, the same applies to Queen A8. It's pretty much functioning as a similar check because from here you can go, oops, let me change the color. You can go to E1, and from A8 you can go to H1. So it's a very similar geometry, I guess. Okay, so what could possibly be the move? Maybe you're thinking Queen H8. Well, it's kind of the same idea. They can play B2, they can play Queen B2. There's no advantage to be found here. If they play B2, you can play D7, and you can get a position where there are a bunch of queens on board, which is fun, but it's very dangerous, especially because you're down a pawn. So unless you're playing like a machine, you're not going to hold that if you're careful. But it's just going to be a perpetual check. Right, that's the idea. So what is the move after double queening? Surprisingly, the move is none of those. Not even a queen move. Instead, it's D7. Very subtle idea. Just the idea is I want to move my queen. Not there. I want to move my queen, and I want to promote in the next move. And then black can say, okay, sure, I'll just do the same thing. B2. That's their best move. Surprisingly, that's their best move. If they go to try to check you, maybe you thought about that, you just move out of the way, king d6, and say, okay, your checks are going to run out. I'm just going to end up checking you back and then push my pawn to promote. So white is actually winning in this position, even after a move like b2 that looks very promising. Queen a5 is the killer shot because now the pawn can no longer push because the king is in the way, which means we have 2 queens against 1. So that's going to be a win for white. Okay, so like I said, d7 is the right move. and any other check is going to be very similar, so I'll let you mess with that if you'd like. The position will be in the description. Okay, the best move for black, b2. Great. Now, what's the deal here? I can check, right? But isn't this going to lead to the same kind of thing? Well, it's not, and this is the beauty of the position. So I love this puzzle, and here's why. Queen a8 check. Great. Queen a2, only move. Now you queen. You have 2 queens. Great. So if you want to trade off, that'd be great for you. So if they trade off, you just take, and now king b1, and clearly you're winning here. Right? There's not even a wonder, because the king moves forward, or you can just keep checking. You can pick this guy up, as long as you're not letting them promote. Okay. So instead of them capturing, what can they do? They can queen as well. Look at this. So you have right now 4 queens on board, and you're still down a pawn. So what do? How do you win this? It's a very precise win. So even if you want to just pause the video here and just, now that you got the queens on board, see if you can find the winning idea. I'll give you a hint. There's a bit of geometry in there. Maybe a little bit of, maybe we're drawing triangles somewhere. So that's the hint. Okay, so now we have these 2 queens guarding the king. But that leaves the king susceptible, open, vulnerable on this diagonal, which means you can play queen h8. Great. So this queen that's on a2 is currently pinned by the queen on a8, right? Which means the only move, because the king obviously can't move, the only move is queen b2. So that must feel kind of good because you're limiting the options. Now, the best move is to play queen h1. Look at the way the queens are making use of all these diagonals. And in a very similar way, the queen on b2 cannot do anything because it's pinned, which means the queen on b2 can't, the queen on a2 can. I don't know if I said that backwards or not. Okay, so both things are pinned here. Great. So what is the next move? Well, both queens, I should say either queen, can make use of a8, and this is going to be a winning endgame. So queen on the h8 square goes to a8, and now if you make the kind of normal move, queen a2, now I can play, again, this is just ridiculous. I can play the very simple, just look at this position. Find the best move here. This is ridiculous. King d6. Look at this. The threat is I'm going to take your pawn. Look at how calm of a move that is. If you saw that move, tell me in the comments, because that move blew my mind. I saw that and I was like, what? That move wasn't on my radar. I'm sitting here thinking about more checks. I'm thinking about coming in here, and I don't even know what I was thinking. So now, it kind of feels like black has nothing. Because if they take, here's the point. If they take, you take, they will block. If not, they will lose their queen either way. It'll be a trade. Take, and look at this. This is just in time. Push the pawn, king d5. Remember the rule of the square? Are you familiar with this rule? If you're not, you better be. The king is inside the pawn square, which means as the pawn advances, the king also advances, which means that it can be caught. You don't have to calculate too much, just that. So eventually, if the pawn keeps running, you capture it and then run this pawn up the board. This is a winning king and pawn endgame. And you can evaluate that pretty well from this position. Okay, so what else is there after king d6? This is amazing, this subtle move. Maybe, just maybe, black starts moving the pawn now. What do you do now? Amazingly, all you do is just take the pawn. You don't move your queens. Your queens are defending each other, and they're threatening, I shouldn't say threatening, they're going to exchange off the other 2 queens if one of them is captured. So it's going to be enough. So maybe you're curious about h4, because I am curious about it. Let's talk about it. So again, surprisingly, the best move, both queens are pinned, by the way. You can play king d4, and you're just going to push this pawn. This is amazing. I love it. It's so cool. Okay, if they don't take, if they just keep pushing the pawn, what do? So right here, another like puzzle-like situation where even right here is a good place to start a puzzle. The best move, the only move, is king to e3. This king is going to walk over here, probably not in the light square, walk over here and take this pawn. That's what it's looking like. H2. Now, there are a lot of ways to win it. The computer is telling me queen takes b1, and then king takes b1, and then queen h1 check. Look at this. Look at the touch. And then the king blocks. You take this pawn, and it's a win. Amazing. Look at that. Come on. That's just so, so, so cool. So this is why I make YouTube videos for fun and give half the money to charity, because I just love seeing this stuff. It's just like fun for me. Okay. Hopefully you get the idea that this is an amazing puzzle. It's one of the better ones I feel like I've covered in quite a while. But 4 queens on the board. It's a battle of the queens. Hopefully you were able to figure it out. If you were, let me know in the comments. But that is it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.